Well, hello there everybody. So, with the conclusion of episode 24, we've actually seen the end of season 1 of Worst Difficulty Spikes, if you want to call it that. Don't worry, we're going to be getting back to regular episodes next week, but I'm kind of taking a bit of a break. However, I actually wanted to do a bit of a bonus episode, so to speak. So I've gotten a lot of different requests in the comments throughout my videos about, hey, what about this boss and what about this boss? And while some of them I do think are worthy of being entries in the future, some of them I don't personally think deserve to be on there, but I felt like it'd be better if I at least talk about them for a little bit and kind of just go over why I don't think they'll be proper entries in the future. That's about it. This isn't going to be a super scripted heavy video. It's mostly just me talking about stuff, and, well, honestly, that's pretty much all I got. So, think of this as kind of just a silly little bonus episode. Sit back and relax, or put it on while you sleep. I don't really care, and enjoy. So, first up is one of two major ones I've seen requested for Final Fantasy X, which, on one hand, I'd love to talk about that game because it's one of my favorite games of all time, but on the other hand, I don't really think either of these really fit the bill of this crazy difficulty spike, and that would be Sinspawn Gui. Now, yes, on one hand, it's the first boss that has two distinct phases, and he does have a combined 1800 HP on his main body, as well as the 2000 HP on his head in phase 1 and the 1000 on his head in phase 2, which means that you're looking at 21,000 HP that you have to get through. And that can be intimidating, especially since he can also block your limbs, but at the same time, by the point you get here, you're going to start being able to have slightly stronger abilities, second to your magic, and Yuna has gotten both Valifor and Ifrit at her use. Plus, let's be honest, the second phase is basically a freebie. I wouldn't even really say this fight is that difficult, because a lot of it's just a case of, okay, take out the arms so they can't block his main body, and you can kind of just ignore the head most of the time until it starts charging up. And when it starts charging up, you either swap to Lulu and have her use magic, or I'm pretty sure Waka can just smack him in the face with a blitzball, and that also works pretty well. The thing is, I definitely do see this fight is a bit of a step up in challenge, but I wouldn't call it a crazy difficulty spike. It just feels kind of like a bit of an evolution, since you just fought the Chocobo Eater not too long before this, who had a 10,000 HP. Granted, you could knock him off of the arena and kill him that way, but honestly, doing that is harder than actually taking out his 10,000 HP. So, it's kind of one of these weird fights where I do think it is a step up in challenge, but the fight's well built up throughout the entire first act of the game, and everything's kind of climaxing at this point because you think, okay, well, this is going to be our showdown with Sin where we fight him and everything. Now, it's pretty obvious that it's not going to work out that way and things aren't going to go that well, but it is presented with a layer of gravitas and everything like that. It's not this monster that just comes out of nowhere and is completely unfair and impossible bullshit to deal with. I don't know. Like, is the fight harder than everything prior to him? Yes. However, I'd say that all the difficulty that this fight has is warranted, and it's not even really that difficult. It's mostly just a matter of, can you focus on doing multiple things at once and just juggling multiple objectives? Because offensively, he really doesn't hit that hard. Like, he has a basic poison attack that doesn't do too much. He's got, I think, a Thunder Spell, which does about 400 or so damage, and he can punch you for about 300 damage, but really, he's not hitting that hard. A lot of his challenge just comes from his defensive capabilities. And granted, you can't cheese him out with anything like Zanmato, but I wouldn't say this fight is even close to being something like a difficulty spike. Now, I didn't admittedly get too many requests for this one, but I did see about 5 throughout my videos saying, hey, this guy would be an entry. Personally, I just don't really agree with it. Now, there was another Final Fantasy X boss that's been mentioned a ton that I'll be talking about later in this video. I don't personally think he deserves one either, but I got way more requests for him, so we'll get to him when we get to him. Soon enough. Another really big one is Commandant Alexei from Tales of Vesperia, and okay, I do agree, this is one of the hardest fights in the game. In fact, I think he might actually be the hardest required boss, but I don't think he's a difficulty spike. And the reason why is kind of because, well, he's built up as the main threat throughout the game, and ultimately he's not that much tougher than a lot of the fights right before him. The game's presented like he's going to be the big bad final boss. It's got the cinematics, it's got the presentation, it's got the big epic dungeon, it's got the music. So, is he hard? Yes. Is he the hardest boss in the story? Probably so. But at the same time, it's not really blindsiding you and it's not coming out of nowhere. It's kind of just a natural conclusion to the difficulty, which I think is warranted. Meanwhile, Gattuso, which I did talk about in worst difficulty spikes, in fact, he's the one who started this whole series, is a random boss in one of the first dungeons in the entire game. You've just gotten a full party, but they don't have a lot of good skills yet. You don't really have good options for healing your party or curing status effects. You don't have passive abilities. You don't have mystic arts. And this boss is able to not only kill you very quickly and is hyper aggressive and has 2 strong adds with him, but also the boss is able to poison you, which can kill you no matter how high your HP is, because it does percentage damage and it ticks down very quickly. On top of that, you don't really have item toss available on anyone other than Rapide yet, so even healing up other characters is kind of a pain in the ass. And is it as hard as Alexei? No, but the fact that this random wolf comes out of nowhere has no real impact in the story, and it's just harder than anything for the next 20 to 30 hours, I think does make him worthy of being a terrible difficulty spike. Now, one that I wholeheartedly agree with deserving to be on this list would be the Fawful Express from Mario and Luigi Bowsers Inside Story. This fight is awful. It requires a level of precision that none of the other giant battles demand, and it also requires blowing into the microphone, which, even if you have good lung capacity, well, it's a simple fact that you have to do the perfect inputs over and over for the better part of 5 minutes, which will honestly wear you down over time, most likely, and the microphone doesn't always pick it up perfectly. Now, the thing is, it's actually a lot easier in the 3DS version, but also the 3DS version is not very good. However, I would 100% make this boss a video in the future, except I don't have a good way to record this fight. Like, simply put, I just don't have a good way to set up a dual screen recording that can handle it sideways. I could try running it in an emulator, but it's not going to look very good. If I can get a setup for it, or if somebody wants to send me their footage and let me know, I will make it a video. But for now, it's kind of just going to have to be on the back burner. I do think this fight is terrible, though, and the fact that you just have to use the fire for basically everything makes this battle get very tiring very quickly. One of the most baffling requests I've gotten is probably whenever the Train to Hell starts showing up and those other sort of Abnos start showing up in Lobotomy Corporation. First off, I've never played Lobotomy Corporation, and it's not really the kind of game I'd be super into. And second off, I don't know how you can even really justify this as a difficulty spike. I guess managing resources? I don't know. Nothing about this is a game I'm really that interested in playing, and honestly, unless someone buys it for me, I don't think I'm ever going to really cover it or touch on it. It's not the kind of game that looks fun to me. It looks like Fallout Shelter and SCP just kind of hate-fucked and had a kid. And then there's a series I can't believe hasn't been featured yet here, and that would be the Etrian Odyssey series. Now, as for the boss that I don't think would qualify, that'd be any fight from Etrian Odyssey 5. This game is very difficult, yes, but honestly, the difficulty in this game feels completely fair and balanced, where it's all just about player knowledge and also making use of all the game's mechanics, because Etrian Odyssey 5 was a big expansion over the other ones in terms of what the player was able to do. Now, that being said, Etrian Odyssey 1 through 4, every single one of them has something that will end up in the worst difficulty spike series sooner or later, because there are some fights that are crazy. In fact, I think for 5, the closest boss I could think of that I guess would kind of fit would be Hippogriff, but even then, he's not really a bad boss fight or an unfair difficulty spike. It's just he doesn't have any sort of gimmicks. He's just a fight you have to work through and win. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. Now for quite a slew of Metroid stuff I've gotten told. Not really from the 2D Metroid games. They've basically all been Metroid Prime stuff, which, understandable, I think. They have more wildly varying levels of difficulty, and typically are harder games, at least from my experience, than the 2D Metroid games, which, outside of Dread, all kind of turn into jokes by the end. Now, that being said, there's not really any fights from Metroid Prime 1 I saw, and quite frankly, I don't think there's any fights from Prime 1 that are really that difficult. I mean, I'd say the areas are probably tougher, and even then, I don't really have any sort of animosity towards the Phazon mines like some people do. I think, yeah, it's a hard level, but it's pretty much the end of the game. As for Prime 2, there were two major bosses that I had heard kind of requested a lot. One of them was the Boost Guardian, and you know what? Don't worry. He'll get an episode at some point, and it's probably going to be the angriest episode I ever make, because I despise that boss, and quite frankly, I hate Metroid Prime 2 as a whole anyways, but that's a story for another time. Otherwise, the other one I saw a lot was the Spider Guardian, and I mean, I guess I kind of get why. It's completely throwing the gameplay mechanics out the window, and it does a lot of damage, so it's a puzzle boss, but I don't know, I just never really had that big of a trouble with it, and I played it on the GameCube version, which GameCube Prime 2 is honestly not fun, like, at all. Not even remotely. There's a lot of crap there. The Wii version's a lot easier because you have Spring Ball, and, well, that helps a lot for these precision platforming bits. Either way, while I don't love this fight, the fact is, it's not some super fast-paced change, so even though the gameplay style is noticeably different, it's not really this super hard, fast twitch reaction challenge. It's just a case of slow down and take your time. And honestly, I do get why people hate this fight, and I can see it being a spike for some people, but it just never really was for me. There's also another Metroid Prime one. Now, Prime 3, I didn't see too many fights outside of, I guess, the final boss fight for Prime 3 on Hyper Mode, but to be fair, Prime 3 on Hyper Mode in general is kind of a mess. And the other one being actually the fight with Moginar, or Moginar, however you pronounce it, which, yeah, you know what, I can see that, maybe at some point. Prime 4 was actually one of the most interesting ones, though. And that would probably be Prime 4's final boss fight against Sylux. Now, there was also some for the Omega Griever, but his fight is really just a matter of use the mouse controls or use the gyro controls and aim at his limbs better. It makes the fight so much easier. As for Sylux, I kind of get why some people don't like this fight and why they could find it hard, because you're having to also, especially in Phase 1, you're having to juggle the others alongside fighting him. But the thing is, you've kind of been doing that throughout a fair bit of the game, where you're having to manage resources and also make sure the others are taken care of, and it's not really that hard. There's plenty of time to revive them when they go down. I would also say the fact is, if you really just want to skip this phase, you swap to the Thunder Beam and just spam the crap out of the beam combo. It really does make a difference. Don't just rely on the basic beam. That's going to fix your problems. Now, another thing with Prime 4 is, personally, it's actually my second favorite of the Metroid Prime games. 3 is my favorite, it was my first one, and I just think even though it's not as interconnected of a world, it's got a lot of my favorite levels and most fun areas to go through, best music, best story, that sort of stuff. Otherwise, well, why do I like Prime 4 so much? Well, it's honestly just a case of, I think Prime 1 and Prime 4 are basically neck and neck for me, where they're both good 8 out of 10 games that I enjoy playing and I can go back to pretty easily. But the difference is, Prime 4 doesn't have me getting ambushed by Chozo Ghost for the entire second half of the game, so that's why. As for Prime 2, I actively despise that game, and honestly that had to be the subject of its own video. But yeah, I mean, Sylux Phase 1 can be a bit much to deal with at times, but just use your power bombs, use your beam combos, especially Thunder Beam combo. It annihilates this boss fight. Use your focus beam. Like, use your abilities, and this battle really isn't that bad. It takes a while, sure, but this is only about 35% of his health bar anyways, and this is the hardest phase of the fight. Phase 2, I don't think anybody actually really struggles with. The control swap up is a little bit weird, but it's mostly just a cinematic phase where you cut down like 10 to 15% of his HP, and I mean, if you have the enhanced armor, then I guess it's the time to use the special missile shield, but that's about it. It's a pretty easy fight, and probably the most bare bones phase of the bunch, which it's kind of supposed to be. It's the transition phase. Then there's his final phase, which, I don't know. Again, I never really found much of a problem with this phase. I think it's the fact that he can steal your energy tanks, but it's not really as bad as it seems. Whenever he's kind of going in these semi-invincible states, remember you have bombs, and those are the answer to a lot of his attacks. And yes, lining up the bombs can be annoying, but it's Metroid Prime 4. Use your psychic powers, pick up the bomb, and throw it in his face. That actually does a lot of good. I don't know. It's kind of one of these weird cases where whenever I hear talk about Prime 4, it's people always either just follow this whole train of, oh, it's a bad game, it's awful, or you'll get these people like, I actually didn't have problems with Prime 4, it was pretty, like, no, I'm not. Here's the thing. Prime 4 was a damn good game. In fact, I honestly vastly prefer it over Prime 2, and I slightly prefer it over Prime 1. I think it's genuinely one of the best games on the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2, especially if you're looking for an awesome first-person shooter and a great Metroidvania in the same process. Yes, I know people talk about the desert and all that stuff, but you know what? Metroid Prime 1 had fucking Magmore caverns interconnecting everything, so I don't think it's that different. It's just one is much more cramped and one's much more open. You're going to be spending about 5 minutes having to traverse through them and remember where the heck to go anyways. Anyways, though, yeah, I don't know. Like, Sylux can be hard, but again, he's a final boss fight, and while I'm not going to go and defend his narrative weight, I don't really think that this fight should have been easy. So, nothing about this fight really felt like overkill to me. The only Metroid Prime bosses I'd say felt like true overkill that will be getting a video at some point in the future is Boost Guardian and Prime 2. Okay, this one, our second to last one, is one that I fully understand why it would have qualified for the series, but I don't really think it can anymore, and that's Balteus from Armored Core 6. See, pre-patch Balteus definitely qualifies for it, as you can see in the footage here. The missiles are just absurd and downright relentless with how fast they're coming out. If you're playing it after the patch, though, they are significantly slower, so it's much easier to deal with. But it's kind of this case of there's just not really a way to fight the, original version of Balteus anymore, so I'm not sure I can make a good video that really fit the whole situation. I mean, I guess I could try down patching the game, but that's kind of a headache to do. But either way, if you do wonder what to do with Balteus, if for some reason you don't have the ability to fight his patched version for one reason or another, I recommend getting that little bubble blaster, because if you stay close to him, it tears through his shield, and Balteus is a kind of boss that will become crippled once his shield goes down, where he's just instantly staggered. So it's just an easy way to just stagger him, and then after that you can kind of use your sword for melee or your other heavy weapons. But don't waste a lot of your ammo against his shielded form outside of maybe missiles. Now, his second phase, where he brings out the flamethrowers and the big cannon, can be a lot scarier. At that point, though, the flamethrowers are kind of treated like super telegraph sword slashes, where you can kind of see them coming. As for the cannon, it doesn't have much of a visual telegraph, but it makes a big beep on your HUD, so that's your best chance to just dodge it and get out the way. Balteus is definitely the hardest boss in Act 1 of Armored Core 6, and probably the hardest boss for the first 60% of Armored Core 6, but I don't really think he fits as this super unfair difficulty spike, at least not after the patch. Maybe prior to that, but who knows. I don't really think he qualifies for an episode. But the last entry is the one I have gotten, bar none, the most requests for, other than Queen of Hatred from Library of Ruina. Except, unlike Queen of Hatred, which I'd never fought before, or Minotaur, which I fully understood why, this one, I don't get why at all. But you know what? We'll treat it with a bit more gravitas and give it a bit more ceremony. So, get comfortable, as we dive on in to Final Fantasy X one last time.
Pitiful mortal. Your hope ends here! And your meaningless existence with it!
Here we are, Seymour Flux, often considered one of the hardest bosses, at least mandatory bosses, in the entire Final Fantasy series. And I, for the life of me, do not understand why. Okay, so completely ignoring the Zanmato in the room, if you've been engaging with the customization mechanics, which are a key part of this game and were introduced to you about 20 plus hours ago, then this fight is kind of a joke. But okay, what exactly does Seymour Flux do? Well, here's the thing. He's not relying solely on damage, and that can make him a little bit spooky, because he's able to, or his main strategy is to hit you with Lance of Atrophy, following it up with Dispel, basically completely removing any of your buffs and also turning the party member into a zombie, and that zombie status must be cured. It cannot be simply cleansed with something like regular healing items, and also you can't heal a zombie character. The thing is, first off, before you get here, there is a merchant once. He not only sells a ton of holy waters, but he also sells a special alchemy dagger for Riku. What does alchemy do? Well, it doubles the effects of any and all healing items. And Riku is going to be using her use skill quite a ton to take care of all those exclusive items, which means things like Albed potions will keep you more than topped up in terms of health when we get the fight going further. Otherwise, a lot of this boss's main strategy is to hit you with Lance of Atrophy to turn you into a zombie, use Dispel to remove your buffs, and then have its Mortis form use Full Life to instantly kill the zombie character. So the solution is just kill Morty. Now, you're going to probably say, okay, but if I do, he's just going to drain 4,000 HP from Seymour and keep going. And then he'll drain 3,000, 2,000, 1,000. Yes, it does. But every time you kill him, his turns are getting delayed, so he's not getting to act as often, and now all you fight is Seymour. And on his own, what does Seymour have other than Lance of Atrophy? Not a whole lot. Well, okay, he does have Flare he can use in the second phase, which is whenever he's below half HP. And he does have, Cross Cleave, which is like a physical attack that does hurt pretty badly. But it's not really hitting that much harder than a lot of his other attacks, and this is completely ignoring the Zanmato in the room, because here's the thing, when I first played this game, I beat this boss on my first try, and I didn't even know where Zanmato was or that it even existed. You don't need it to beat this guy.
Death awaits you.
Okay, I will grant you that him being able to one-shot your summons is quite scary, but personally, I didn't really go around spamming my summon overdrives that much in battle. I'd use them a fair bit, but I usually didn't really spam their overdrives, so I was pretty much always topped off. And the thing is, when you know this fight's coming, you know just have their overdrives topped off. Otherwise, though, really, these overdrives tear into him. Like, that's not too uncommon to see you quad 9 damage on both Seymour and Morty, and the fact is that will kill Morty, which will cause it to drain more HP from Seymour, which lowers his health even further. And yes, he can cast Protect to increase his physical defense, but that doesn't really do a damn thing against Aeon overdrives, or overdrives in general for that matter, I'm pretty sure. And you can just dispel the Protect. Now, in his second phase, he does have access to Flare, which is very scary, but he doesn't really like to use it that often if you're not giving him much of a chance to act on his own. It's kind of a thing he does when he can freely act. Otherwise, a lot more of his moves are going to be reactionary based off of, does he see a summon? Okay, he's going to try and go for, in that case, he's going to go for Banish and those sorts of things. he does have Total Annihilation, which is a very scary attack, and he does have Sloga, which can be annoying, but you can easily counteract Sloga with Hastega, which Titus should have by this point. And as for Total Annihilation, I'm going to be honest, it only ever comes up when he's at his second half of his HP bar, which, okay, fair, can be dangerous, but I don't really see it all too often. And that's because a lot of the time, once he gets kind of around 40,000 HP, I've always just liked the strategy of nuking him with Aeons. But, assuming we're not doing that, he can't really use it until after he's done, I believe, Flare first, and then he has to go for, let's see. Actually, wait, no, it's not even Seymour that does it. I'm pretty sure it's Morty that does the Total Annihilation, so if you just kind of keep killing Morty, it can't do anything. But, okay. There is also Reflect, which, you know, that is whenever he enters auto attack mode, that's when you know Total Annihilation's coming out. But again, it's tied to Morty, not to Seymour, so it doesn't really matter most of the time. You kind of just beat his ass. Otherwise, what I would probably say is really just use your summons, spam them, and their overdrives, and you'll kind of see this boss gets torn apart pretty quickly, all things considered. Especially, even if you don't have a bunch of overpowered gear yet, which, you know, fair enough, you probably won't on a first-time playthrough, you do have Bahamut. Bahamut will break 9,999 damage. It's gonna be hitting that 5-digit damage mark, and that will kill Morty, which will just completely delay Total Annihilation by a lot, as well as do a ton to Seymour, and then do even more to Seymour when Morty drains HP from him. But, I don't know. This is the fight I've always heard is like this super crazy, almost impossible wall for the story mode, and it's like this super crazy fight, and no, this fight is not that difficult, at least not to me. I've never really struggled with this battle. The fight that kicked my ass was always Lady Unalesca, which, you know what, I'll probably talk about that fight in a video at some point, albeit not at worse difficulty spikes, because it's a pretty major story fight that's built up throughout a lot of the game. As for this fight, well, I mean, okay, otherwise, I do get what some people say where it does come out of nowhere, because the fact is, while it is a fight with the main villain, it's not super built up, it's straight up Seymour pretty much jumps your ass. So I will give it that. It can be surprising, but there's a save point right before it, so it's not as cruel as it could be. I don't know. This is a fight that I've always heard people find really difficult, but I never really did.
And stay up there!
And that's all for this video. I know this one's very different. Again, I consider this more like a bonus episode. It's just kind of the different multiple fights I've seen listed that I don't really fully agree with, but I kind of wanted to talk about and touch up upon for a little bit. Not much else to it. We'll be getting back into proper episodes of Worst Difficulty Spikes probably next Friday, so look forward to that, I suppose. And if you enjoyed this video, then great. I mean, this one was just kind of a much more casual, mostly unscripted event, so yeah, nothing super crazy here. Either way, that's all I've got for now. And I look forward to seeing y'all next week when we get back into proper episodes of Worst Difficulty Spikes. And yeah, that's about all I've got for now. I did see a comment on one of my earlier videos about a guy saying I was scraping the bottom of the barrel for this series to keep it going. And to that guy I say, oh you sweet summer child, we haven't even opened the barrel up. I'll see you next time.